Hello everybody, welcome to the first ever Film Buds mini episode. My name is Henry, and we're probably going to be doing this a couple of times a month, depending on, our schedules, but we figured, if one of us sees something, but the other doesn't, or we just have a passion for something that we really want to talk about, we figured, hey, let's do some mini reviews, try and reach a few more people, and yeah, so thanks so much for joining us. We hope that you'll subscribe and rate to the show, tell your friends about it, share us on social media. These will just be very quick, a few minutes, maybe 10 minutes, depending on what the topic is, and we're just gonna be doing the nitty gritty, what we think, what we didn't, what we like, what we don't like, that kind of thing. And so yeah, we hope you like this. Please give us suggestions for either things you'd like to see reviewed or just things we should talk about, things we shouldn't. Please let us know. But today, I am going to be talking about the entire Indiana Jones franchise, all the way from Raiders of the Lost Ark to the new and final installment, Dial of Destiny. So, should be a fun time. I'm a huge Indiana Jones fan. Have been wanting to talk about these movies for quite a while. It's just going to be me. It'll be, hopefully quick, and I hope you'll, stick around. Well, let's get into it. So, I saw Indiana Jones, the first couple, when I was a kid, but I did like them. I never was in love with them. And for whatever reason, I don't know if it's, getting older or, being in the military. I don't know. But I've recently become a big fan of the franchise. It's one of my favorite franchises and favorite characters of all time. Very close to, the top for me personally. And I just saw Dial of Destiny in theaters. And so yeah, we will be ending off with that. Figured since we're talking about all five, I'll just start from the beginning. Raiders of the Lost Ark, which came out in 1981. This one, of course, it was originally titled Raiders of the Lost Ark, not Indiana Jones and Raiders of the Lost Ark, like many now seem to think that's what it was, because at the time they didn't know it was going to be a franchise. It was just going to be one film, and it was created by Steven Spielberg and George Lucas, of course. So this one, unlike the others, which are called Indiana Jones and something else, this is just called Raiders of the Lost Ark. This one obviously, started it all, introduced us to the awesome, kind of daredevil archaeologist Indiana Jones. And I think it is a classic. It's my second favorite of the franchise. I don't know if that's a hot take for a lot or not many. I don't know, but we'll get to my favorite if you just stick around for, a few more minutes. But I think Raiders is still awesome. It's a classic. It's so well directed. Harrison Ford is just perfect in that role. it seems like such an easy performance, but he is that character. So, and of course the theme is amazing. And I don't know how much of this stuff is new for me to say, but I figured, hey, it's just giving my input. So I hope, it's still interesting to all y'all out there. The entire cast is fantastic. I could see how if you go back and watch it now and you're not really a cinephile, you may find it a little bit on the slower side, maybe not as action packed as you might with some of the others, or it's a little bit more gradual in pacing, but that's partly just because of the time. And Steven Spielberg is, more of a gradual, deliberate kind of filmmaker. So he's not super flashy most of the time. But I love this one. Obviously, has launched this huge franchise that I love. And so but I just genuinely do think it is a great movie, which not always, the first movie isn't always great in franchises, but I think this one is pretty near perfect. All right. Well, that's how I'm thinking these reviews will be, just, quick and dirty. All right, next one. Let's get to the Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, which came out 3 years later in 1984. And this one is, at least in my opinion, is the darkest of the franchise. It takes place in these really voodoo-like caves and tribes and things like that, to where, they're in these dark caves and taverns, and it's this very pretty terrifying place for Indiana Jones to be in. And of course, this is where we meet Short Round, the young boy who accompanies him, as well as the actress who comes along for the ride with Indy. And this one is, I'll say spoiler that I don't think there's a bad Indiana Jones film out there. I know some people think that, like Raiders, Last Crusade, and then this one even are pretty good, and then others fall short. I think all of them are at least 4 out of 5s for me. And I think this one, however, though, is probably my least favorite. I find that I appreciate the darkness of it, and I love the look of like the caves and the fire and all of that stuff is awesome. I do find that the pacing is pretty inconsistent. It takes a while to really get going. And then I feel like when it gets into the main plot, it is quite brisk. And it feels inconsistent a little bit in that way in the storytelling. But, locations are awesome. A lot of practical sets and locations. Of course, Harrison Ford is awesome. And just the overall atmosphere of the Indiana Jones franchise in that world is something I love, that just kind of an inviting, adventurous, kind of spontaneous feel to a lot of the movies. Another thing I know this is something that, and then another thing that I know this is a big criticism across the board for most people is the Willie Scott character played by Kate Capshaw, who is the actress who comes along with Indy on this journey. And it's, I don't really blame the actress, but the writing is so kind of whiny and obnoxious. She's just always yelling. She's at 11 all the time, and it becomes so tiring. Like it's really grating. And considering how, I guess, uninvested she is in the journey, it feels like it just makes it not feel as fun. Whereas Indiana Jones, even if he's not always having fun, he's at least committed and in for it. Whereas she just really wears out her welcome pretty quickly. So I'd say that's probably the biggest detractor for me, but overall still a very solid movie. It's well directed, score, John Williams, excellent. The final scene on the bridge is great. The mine cart ride or chase is awesome. And the people being lowered into the lava or like flame pits is awesome. And it's pretty dark for just being a conventional blockbuster, but it's pretty cool. But overall, still, yeah, it's if I had to pick, this would be my least favorite. But Raiders would be a 5 out of 5. This would be a 4 out of 5 for me. All right, next one, third, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, released 5 years later in 1989. And, Steven Spielberg, as he did with the fourth one, he directed this one as well. This one is my favorite. Again, I don't know if that's something that, I know some people love this one, over Raiders and vice versa. I think these are probably the two that are the top fan-wise and critics-wise. But this one is my favorite for sure. I think, the introduction of Sean Connery as Indiana Jones's dad is awesome. They are perfect together. And I think one thing that I find with Raiders that this one doesn't have is after about an hour in Raiders, it kind of stands still at the same location for the most part, whereas this one keeps going. It's new places for the most part all the time. They go to that like kind of castle keep or outlook where he meets Sean Connery, and they travel across parts of Europe, and I think that's what helps keep the pace going. And then of course the final sequence on the cliffside, that in the desert with the tanks, is fantastic, and it just shows how great Steven Spielberg is at choreography in action. It's so inventive, and as it is with the entire franchise, but I think he really does it well here. And yeah, this one, it feels like it's just most within the world. There's not a lot of build up. There's not a lot of epilogue to it. It's just a chapter in the world. But I think to me, it's the most consistently paced, the most well written. And yeah, so I always enjoy, if I'm going through the movies as I did recently, this is always the one I love getting to, and it's one of my favorite movies of all time as well. So I don't really have a lot of criticisms. With all these movies, there is, little drops in pace every once in a while. And again, if you are new to them, you may find them to be a little bit slower than you were expecting. But that's just how it is. There's nothing wrong with that. Oh, and then also the blimp sequence is amazing. Like where he says no ticket when he throws the guy out the window is awesome. And that's another thing is, the humor of the Indiana Jones character, both writing and Harrison Ford, is just works so well for me. And I love it. So yeah, this one, big 5 out of 5 for me. All right, so let's get to 4. 2 left here. Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, which came out in 2008, so almost 20 years later. This one Steven Spielberg helmed as well, but unfortunately this one was fairly panned, unlike the others, which all got pretty strong reviews. This one was really, I mean, to be blunt, really hated by a lot of fans. They thought it was a major dip in quality, a big letdown, especially after all these years. I'll say when I first saw this, I'd seen the first three. I saw this probably 4 or 5 years ago, and I was not a huge fan of it, really. I didn't loathe it, but it definitely was a step down. I don't know if this is because I've just grown more fond of it. I appreciate it more. I notice things more than I did before. But I actually, despite, I agree it's flawed, and I would say this is probably 3 out of, in the third best, third worst, whatever you want to call it, depending on your philosophical perspective. I actually, it is, again, it's flawed, but I enjoy it. I think it's pretty fun. I think Shia LaBeouf is a really fun addition to the cast, and he and Indiana Jones are great. And of course, Karen Allen, who plays Marion across the entire franchise, is great as well, as she is in all of them. I think this one has awesome, very inventive action sequences. The comedy hits really well. Cate Blanchett is a very kind of cartoony villain, but pretty fun. And there are some good twists. And the final, or close to the final, action sequence out in the jungle with the car chase is just so well choreographed. It's brilliantly done. And really, even though the third act goes way off into sci-fi, supernatural stuff with the aliens and the magic, all that stuff, I honestly just enjoy it. It's fun. It feels inventive. Some of the CG is a little inconsistent, but for the most part, it's a solid ride. It's not as good as the first 3, or actually, I would say this is better than Temple of Doom. But performances are good. The whole nuclear test, where nuclear or atom bomb test where he survives in the refrigerator is ridiculous, of course. But in the context of this kind of franchise, I don't really care all that much. It is what it is. So yeah, this one, it is flawed. I see why some people hate on it, but it's not that bad. I still think it's solid, honestly, compared to a lot of other movies, in my opinion. So that one's a 4 out of 5. All right, let's get to the last one, sadly. The new film and final and 5th installment, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. This one is in theaters currently, and it sadly ends the franchise because, Harrison Ford is in his 80s now, but he wanted to do a film where Indiana Jones did not have the advantage of youth, and all the adventures and the physicality of doing what he does. And that definitely is an interesting point. It's nothing brilliant, but it's an interesting look at a franchise like this, or a hero who you don't really see that often. This one is the only one to be not directed by Steven Spielberg. It's directed by James Mangold, who did Logan, The Wolverine, 3:10 to Yuma, Night and Day, Walk the Line, and a few others. And so overall, I like James Mangold a lot. Logan is probably his best, but Steven Spielberg was not able to, unfortunately, which I think is the movie takes a bit of a hit because of that. This one, you start off with Indiana Jones in World War II, where they de-age him, which overall, it looked pretty good considering how bad I think others in the past have looked. But it's still, something about it is slightly off. You can tell it's not, and obviously it's not him, because they would have had to have shot this footage back, in the 80s. So overall, it's not really that big a deal, because most of the time you don't really see him up close. It still looks really good, and the action sequence on the train is awesome. Very classic in Indiana Jones. While I would prefer them not to de-age actors, it looked fairly good. It starts off with that, and then we meet him where he is fairly elderly man, and he reunites with his goddaughter, or runs into her rather. And we also learn that Shia LaBeouf, who was his son, died, and he has become estranged from Marion, who he married in the 4th one. And this one is really just trying to bring the hero to a close, and in the franchise on a heartfelt note. And overall, I know some people were a little disappointed, and I wouldn't say I was blown away. I still think it's solid. It would be my probably 4 in the franchise, 4 out of 5, with, again, Temple of Doom being, my least favorite. Overall, I found it very entertaining. I was never really bored. There were times where I was like, this is awesome. Again, that very beginning chase, I think the third act, not to spoil it too much, is awesome where they go, even if it's a ridiculous concept. Visually and conceptually, it's a pretty awesome idea, and it really works for the character. And there's a few very heartfelt moments with him during that time. His Phoebe Waller-Bridge, who I like, she was in Fleabag. She's good overall. She's a very strong, sturdy character, and they work well with each other. It is a little long. It's about 2.5 hours. It's the longest of the franchise, which hurts it a little bit. But overall, I don't mind an epic. I'd rather have more Indiana Jones than not. It does sometimes feel a little bit drier than the previous 4. I think that's mainly because of Steven Spielberg. It just doesn't have as much heart as he would put into those movies. But it's still, it's a fitting end. I'm really sad that it's over. I wish they could just keep making them with, Harrison Ford, but I know that's not really practical anymore. If you like Indiana Jones, I definitely would see it, and it definitely calls back to the, old Hollywood action movies, which, don't really get made very often, and Harrison Ford just slips back into that role perfectly. And so I still enjoyed it a fair bit, and seeing it in theaters was awesome. I think that is about it, and I would give Dial of Destiny is a 4 out of 5, and I am looking forward to rewatching it. All right, well, that is about it. Once again, I love Indiana Jones. I'm sure I like it a lot more than other people do. I know that, I'm in my late 20s. I know some people like Indiana Jones, but I feel like that's mostly for an older crowd now, I guess because it's been around so long. But it's one of my favorite franchises, and I love the Indiana Jones character. Yeah, he's just great, and I will really, really miss him not having new chapters, but is what it is. I'm happy to have what we have. Please let me know your thoughts on the franchise, when I post about it on social media, or you can email us at thefilmbudspodcast@gmail.com. I'd love to hear if you agree, disagree, don't care. Please just let us know. We love hearing from people who are listening, and we will be doing this, as I said earlier, probably a couple times a month. Probably at least once a month, but probably more than that, 2-3 times, something like that. And we hope that this is a new, fun little addition to the catalog for us. And if you have suggestions for what you would like to see reviewed, please contact us. Let us know. All right, well, that is it for me. Hope you all stuck around. Please, again, make sure to rate, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your family, share it around. We want Film Buds to reach as many people as possible because we love it. So, yeah. Anyways, well, I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and we'll see you next time.